So today we're going to talk about my favorite subject. It's called the mindful Enneagram, and uh, basically looking at how to combine the power of mindfulness practice with this amazing map of how we tend to get stuck in dukkha, in suffering, what the Buddha called unnecessary suffering, in 9 different ways. That's mapped out in the Enneagram. So we're going to get into that shortly, but I thought a good way to start would be to lead us in a little bit of meditation. So I will just invite you to sit in a way. If you need to lie down or stand up, you can do that too, but sit in a way that allows you to be relaxed and alert at the same time. Relaxed and alert. So you might want to close your eyes so you can really bring your attention as much as possible to your immediate inward experience. And just notice right off the bat if you're relaxed and alert. What's going on with your body, with your feelings? What's going on with your thoughts? Just start off by just noticing what's happening right in this moment in your body, your emotion, your thoughts. So we're going to explore what are called the foundations of mindfulness for a few minutes. And there's 3 core foundations: mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feeling, vedana, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feeling, and mindfulness of the mind. This is a core teaching of the Buddha. It's at the core of mindfulness practice. So let's start off with the first foundation, mindfulness of the body, the immediate sense of our senses. It can be the body, it can be sound, it can be any of the senses. But let's go with the body, let's go with the breath, just having a sense of the body breathing. An immediate sense of the body breathing. See if you can tune into, how am I breathing right now in this moment? Feel that. Feel direct contact with sensation. You might focus on the belly, expanding, contracting with each breath. This breath right now. Feel that. Feel the immediacy of the sensation of breathing in the belly. Just allow any thoughts or emotions that are swirling about to kind of move a bit into the background. You can't make that go away. You don't have to stop thinking or feeling, but you can bring as much of your attention as you can to this immediate experience of the body and the breath. And allow that to anchor you in the present moment, to bring you here now. This direct contact with sensation of breathing. Just feel that in the belly. As best you can. Feel the immediacy of it. You know, mindfulness can be a little like tasting your food. You know, when you eat a meal, do you really taste the food? Do you enjoy every bite? It has that quality of really tasting the sensation of breathing. It's that immediate, direct. And just notice where that brings you, right here, right now, to the immediacy of your present moment experience in the body. And we're not trying to control the breath, make the breath any particular way, or make the body any particular way. We're simply opening to it as it is right now already. This breath, as it is spontaneously arising in this moment. Just be open to that, the immediacy of it, the sensation. And allow the breathing to be just as it is in your awareness. So the second foundation is mindfulness of feeling. How does it feel, this particular body moment or breath moment? Is there any unpleasantness in the body that we're noticing? Or maybe it's quite pleasant to simply let go of having to think or worry about how to do this right, just let go of all that. Maybe it feels quite peaceful to do that. Or it might be kind of neutral, the feeling of the breath in the body. Maybe it's kind of subtle, not all that vivid. Might be pleasant, there might be unpleasant, there might be neutral. Just see if you can allow that in your awareness as well. So there's the actual sensation of breathing right now. Feel that. It's the first foundation of mindfulness, just being with that. And then the second foundation, noticing if there's any unpleasantness or pleasantness. It's kind of neutral. Maybe it's a combination of all three. And just notice if there's a tendency, if it's pleasant, to kind of grab hold of it, to want to hang on to it, or if it's unpleasant, there might be a tendency to not want to experience that, to push it away or think about something or avoid the unpleasantness. Just notice that quality of how you relate to the pleasantness or the unpleasantness or the neutrality of what's arising in this moment with the breath, the body. Can I allow that to just be? Can I allow it to be pleasant or unpleasant or neutral? Can I hold that tenderly? Can I be kind in this moment, not harsh? So if thoughts arise, it's fine. You can just allow the thoughts to come and go without having to follow them. And just return your awareness to the breath, the body, the immediacy of that. How that it feels to allow that, no matter how it feels, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Can I be with this? Can I allow it to be just as it is? And then there's a even deeper level of mindfulness that's possible as our mind starts to settle a bit. We start to be able to be with whatever's arising, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. You may notice that as a thought arises or a strong feeling, you can kind of feel how that kind of pulls at your attention. You can start to notice that, how the mind is wanting to grab your attention. So it's a little like dancing, mindfulness practice. We're trying to be with the immediacy of the body, how that feels. And every now and then a thought might come along. It's like we're trying to dance with the sensation, and then a thought might come along and try to tap us on the shoulder and invite us to dance without our realizing it. And then as soon as we notice we've been kind of whisked off by the thought, we just remember to come back to dancing with the sensation and the feeling. Sort of, no, thank you. I want to dance with mindfulness right now. So that's kind of the third foundation of mindfulness, to notice when that happens, when you get whisked off by a thought, and you remember to come right back, coming to rest in the immediacy of the body and the breath, how that feels. So we choose. This is an active practice. Mindfulness is an active practice. We choose to come back to these foundations of mindfulness, the body, the senses, how that feels, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And we notice, we start to explore, investigate what happens in the present moment as we do this. And we keep returning, coming back to the immediacy of now. What's really happening right now in the body and the feelings and with the mind. Okay, well, so I hope you got a little bit of a taste of this core teaching of the Buddha on the three core foundations of mindfulness. There's actually four foundations. We won't be exploring the fourth today because that's a whole nother thing. But the reason I've introduced the foundations of mindfulness is because the Enneagram, which we're going to look at, the mindful Enneagram, is a powerful map of how these three capacities or intelligences, you could say, that we all have: the intelligence of our body, of our instincts, the intelligence of our feeling, of our heartful quality, our emotions, our capacity to feel each other's presence and connect with other people, our emotional intelligence, the intelligence of the heart, and then also, of course, the head intelligence, our mental intelligence. The Enneagram is a powerful map of how there is a tendency that we develop from a very early age to lean more heavily on one of those three. Have you noticed that? Probably all had that experience, at least with noticing it with other people, that some people are kind of head types, kind of very intellectual, very good with their minds, particularly good with their minds. I mean, we all have intellect, we all have emotional intelligence, we all have our instincts, but some maybe have a tendency to be lost in their heads. I'm one. I'll admit that. I'm a very mental type of person. And then you may also have noticed that some people are particularly adept at emotional intelligence. They have just a natural aptitude to connect with other people and sense emotions, sense how emotion factors in any given situation. Kind of a sensitivity to how others feel or how I myself might be feeling. And then we might have noticed that there's some people who are particularly adept at their instinctual intelligence, their ability to use their body, let's say in a creative way. I think of certain athletes or musicians who are particularly creative. You know, their bodies just seem to know how to operate on they could just pick up a musical instrument and start fiddling with it and learning it by playing with it with their body, by getting a feel for it with their bodies, with their sense of their bodily intelligence. So the Enneagram is a powerful map that looks at this phenomenon of how, from a very early age, we tend to be one of three basic types: a kind of a more heavily intellectual type, more heavily emotional, intelligence based, or more sort of based on a sense of bodily instinct. And it's a map of 9 basic ways that this happens. And it actually matches up really well with the teachings of the Buddha and the teachings of mindfulness and these 3 core foundations that we were just looking at. Because as you may have noticed, there's a correlation, right? There's these 3 levels of mindfulness that we just explored. Mindfulness of the body, the bodily felt sense, that direct sense of the body intelligence, the exploring our heartful capacity, our capacity to be with whatever arises around, let's say, the sensations that are arising in the body, whether they're pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. That's a capacity of the heart to be with that in a compassionate, kind way. And then we started to just touch a little bit on the 3rd foundation, which is being with the mind. How our mind can be a very powerful tool for us to abstract reality and to think in terms of concepts and to plan and so forth, but it can also take over, right? So this 3rd foundation of mindfulness that we just touched on a little bit is about being able to explore how that catches us and how it causes what we call in Buddhism dukkha, unnecessary suffering. And what the Enneagram is about is it explores how these 3 ways that we tend to depend on one of these 3 intelligences, actually we learn to do this at a very early age, really in infancies, when we're developing our personalities from the very beginning, and we're trying to learn in whatever way we can at a very young age about how to adapt and be in the world and have a personality that allows us to be able to navigate our world. We tend to grab for what works, unconsciously. So if we're naturally adept at the mental, we might lean kind of heavily on our mental capacities and become very, much a kind of a head person like I am. Or we might find that what works best for us, that we have natural ability in, is, we could say, emotional intelligence. Or you might find that, we're a body type. We're very skilled with our hands, or our capacity to be creative with our bodies. We have an instinctive sense of what to do. And we develop this kind of leaning on one of these three centers of intelligence at such an early age that we don't even know we've done that. And a lot of our personality then kind of tends to be more dependent on one of those over another. And that's what the Enneagram maps. It maps the 9 ways that this occurs. So, so I'm going to take you on a little guided tour of the Enneagram symbol and the basic 9 types that I'm talking about. And we'll come back to looking at how this relates to mindfulness in a moment. But I imagine a number of you probably heard of the Enneagram. Am I right? Can I just see a quick show of hands? Who here has kind of heard of the Enneagram? Yeah, most of you. So let me ask, yeah, a number of people, quite a few of you. It's probably why you came to this talk. So let me ask you this question. How many of you sort of feel like you have a pretty strong sense of what your Enneagram type might be? Yeah? Maybe 6, 7 of you out of what, 25, I think are here. Yeah, a lot fewer. Yeah. So, so some of you may be generally familiar with the 9 types, but I'm going to kind of, for those of you who are kind of new to the Enneagram, I'm going to take you on a quick tour. So I'm going to share my screen now. So there's the Enneagram symbol. It's a circle with these strange lines in the middle of it. Enneagram means, Ennea means 9 in Greek. It's a 9-pointed symbol. So you see the 9 points numbered around the circle there that are connected by these strange lines, the blue triangle in the middle, and then these kind of gold lines. So there are typically there's a kind of 9 typical names that are applied to the types, and these are kind of gross approximations of what these 9 types are. These 9 ways of leaning on one of the 3 centers of intelligence. So type 1, sometimes it's called the reformer. By the way, we all have all 9 types. We all exhibit all these 9 forms of dukkha, these 9 ways of identifying with a particular way of being fixated on our attachment to ego. So the type 1 is sometimes called the reformer. For people who are particularly identified with this particular type, they tend to be very principled. They come across as having a strong sense of purpose and direction, a little too self-controlled, and they tend to be quite perfectionistic. Like they have a clear sense of, this is the right way to do it. I know that it should be done this way, not that way. Know anybody like that? The type 2, sometimes called the helper, are people who tend to be come across as very generous. They can be often very emotionally demonstrative. They're eager to be. They're like people pleasers. They're very and they can be a little possessive. They're very eager to help. That's why they're called the helper. They're in fact very identified with being helpful. They've got to help you. If you've got to believe that I can help you, I know I can help you. That's kind of a type 2. Type 3 is sometimes called the achiever. They're really kind of obsessed with being successful, right? Of projecting an image of success. They're very attuned to other people's needs in a very immediate, automatic way, and they're constantly trying to excel at what they think other people need, no matter what it is, no matter who they're with. They really take great pride in being achievers. They tend to be very driven and kind of image conscious. Type 4, the individualist, is kind of the tragic romantic of the Enneagram. They tend to be very expressive, dramatic. rather self-absorbed, temperamental. They have a sense of the tragic, kind of the dark side of life, and especially with regard to themselves. They're very, all these types are very identified with this, and then it's sort of a core attitude or a way of thinking, feeling, and being with their bodies that that you can't really see. They're like blind spots. So for a type 4, they kind of automatically think of themselves as special and different. A number of artists and people who are very, very creative often tend to have this way of interacting with the world. Type 5, the investigator, tend to be very, very intellectual, very proud of what they know. They tend to be quite perceptive. They can be quite innovative thinkers, but they often are quite secretive, private. They come across as a bit isolated. I think of Mr. Spock from Star Trek, people who take great pride in their intellect and tend to, everything gets kind of filtered through their intellect. They often come across as somewhat dry. Type 6, the loyalist, they can be quite engaging. They want to do the right thing. They're very responsible. And they're also characteristically quite anxious. They're constantly thinking, they're mental types. They're constantly thinking about what could go wrong. And they're trying to anticipate what could go wrong. They want to be ready for what could go wrong. So they're always looking for an external authority. Somebody can tell them what might happen or what they should do, everything but their own sense of authority. But then they get disappointed a lot in people that they put their confidence in. So they tend to be suspicious at the same time. So type 7, the enthusiast, I'm a type 7, so you know. They come across as being spontaneous, kind of joyful, exploration of ideas and what's new. They can be quite versatile, but they can also be the quintessential monkey minds of the Enneagram. The idea of having super hyperactive minds that are constantly grasping at some new idea or what's new and different. And what they're really doing is they're avoiding pain and unpleasantness by using their minds to constantly be thinking about something positive or new or different. Then there's type 8. They are sometimes called the challenger. They tend to be very confident, decisive, willful, and they can be quite confrontational, right? They tend to shoot first and then ask questions later, like they have an instinctive bodily sense of what to do in any situation. And then they just do it. And, you all follow me. I know what to do. And then the peacemaker tends to be kind of the opposite of that. They're very receptive, reassuring, complacent. They're somewhat withdrawn. The investigator type 5 is kind of withdrawn into the intellect. The peacemakers are kind of withdrawn into their bodies. They tend to be kind of resigned. They tend to be more interested in what other people want than what they themselves want. They're kind of out of touch with their needs often. Like if you're with a 9 and there's a group of friends and they're trying to figure out, where to go for dinner, 9s tend to say something like, "Oh, whatever y'all want to do is fine with me." That's the kind of giveaway for type 9. So that's a very quick tour, a very, very high level kind of very generalized sense of what these 9 core ways of dukkha are. So at the core of why they're 9 types, as I was saying before, is leaning heavily on one of the 3 centers of intelligence. So as I was saying, and as we were exploring in the meditation, there's 3 ways there's the guy who started the Enneagram was a guy by the name of George Gurdjieff. He lived in the early 20th century, and he's the person who introduced the Enneagram to the West. It's wasn't really known, at least in the West, before he introduced it. And he came up with this idea of three centers of intelligence. And now it's very much accepted in psychology and brain research that there's kind of three core ways that the nervous system and the brain functions. It used to be called the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and the higher reasoning, the human intellect. And as I was saying earlier, we have an affinity for one of the three that we kind of latch onto at an early age, and it becomes the core of our personality. And it happens at such an early age that we're so identified with it that we don't see that we're heavily leaning on that. So these 9 types, there's 3 variations of this particular way of leaning on one of these 3 centers of intelligence. So you can see in this diagram, but there at the body, the 8, 9, and the 1 that we looked at, that's the body type. And the heart types are the 2, 3, and the 4. The head types are the 5, 6, and 7. So you can see how it's sort of divided up this way. So we can kind of walk through these for a minute. And you can sort of see how the 9 types that I described earlier are a reflection of these sort of 3 core types of the head types, the heart types, and the body types. There's 3 variations of each of these 3. There's folks who tend to be very assertive with whichever center they depend most heavily on. There's others who tend to be withdrawn, and there's others who tend to be what we could say compliant, trying to project an image of some kind. And we'll talk about, get a bit more into that the next time I talk about this in another month. I'm going to be giving another talk on the Enneagram. Well, I'll go into more depth about that. But the reformer is a body type, and they tend to be one of the compliant types. So they have a bodily, like I said, a bodily sense of what's right and what's wrong. And they have a particularly strong inner critic that they're trying to comply with. It's their inner sense of the right thing to do in any given situation. So they're very compliant with their inner critic, and it's felt in their bodies. They have a bodily instinctive sense of this is the right thing to do, and that's the wrong thing to do. So the helper, remember, is the type that really is very identified with, I got to help you. I want to help you. I know I can help you, right? They're a feeling type. They're very identified with having their emotional intelligence. And it's another compliant type. So they're very focused outwardly on helping others, on applying their emotional intelligence outwardly. The type 3, the achiever, is another heart type. The 3 green ones here are the heart types. The achiever is an assertive type. They tend to assert their egos outwardly. They tend to be somewhat aggressive. So they're a heart type, but because they're very outwardly focused on success and appearing to be successful and meeting other people's needs and being very, very successful at that, they tend to be cut off from their hearts. Even though they're a heart type, they're kind of out of touch with their hearts. Because they're an assertive type, they're very focused on the outward use of their particular strong suit, their particular center of intelligence. And then the individualist, remember, what is the sort of tragic romantic type? They are another heart type, but their heart type is a withdrawn heart type. They withdraw into their strong emotional life, the sense of the tragic, the dark, seeing themselves as having a specialness compared to other people. So it's a very withdrawn use of the emotional center. So then we come to the 3 head types in blue here. The investigator type 5, remember, that's like Mr. Spock. They tend to be they're another withdrawn type, like the four, but their type of being withdrawn is to draw into the intellect. They are very proud of what they know, and they are very private. They tend to be private and uh, value their privacy. It's their place. They need to feel safe, and the way they feel safe is to hang out a lot in their intellect. So they tend to be a withdrawn type. And then the loyalist is another one of the compliant types, like the reformer type 1 and the helper type 2. What they're compliant with is authority. Remember that if they're really obsessed with what could go wrong and who should I go to find out what's going to happen, and who should I believe? And they're constantly looking for an external sense of authority. So they're trying to comply with whatever that external person or I don't know, system of thought or what have you says, right? But they're often disappointed, but that they still believe that there's an external sense of authority that they need to comply with. So they're using their mental capacity to constantly figure that out. What could go wrong? What authority should I believe in? And then the enthusiast is the third mental type. That's my type. As I said, they're the monkey minds. They're constantly using their mental capacities to grasp at the next cool thing so that I don't have to stay with anything unpleasant. I'm always grasping for something pleasant and new and different and exciting. And then and then the challenger is one of the, we're coming back around to the body types at the top. The challenger, as you might guess, is another assertive type. They project their ego outwards. The 7 is also an assertive type. The 7 is assertive with their minds. They're very aggressive. They tend to be very, like I say, very graspy after new ideas. The 8s are very assertive with their bodies. They're the ones that, like I said, they shoot first and ask questions later. They just go for it. They have an instinctive sense of what to do, a bodily instinctive sense of what to do. And so they're an assertive type. And then the last type is the type 9 is the peacemaker. They're, like I said, they tend to be withdrawn, a withdrawn type. They tend to withdraw into the comfort of the body, of feeling comfortable in the body, they avoid conflict like the plague. They want to feel at peace with the people around them, and they try to create. They don't assert themselves very much. They tend to be withdrawn. They want to just get along with everybody. No matter, it's okay. Whatever movie you want to watch is fine with me. That's the withdrawn body type. So that's a quick review of why they're 9 types, the beginning of why they're 9 types, and a little bit about the different flavors of the body, the heart, and the head types. So just to circle back, and then we can have a little bit of question and answer here in a minute, just to circle back to the core foundations of mindfulness that we were working with earlier. So as I mentioned, these core foundations of mindfulness, being relaxed in the body, recognizing and being with the immediacy of sensation or of sound or the senses, like we did in the meditation earlier, that first foundation of mindfulness. The second foundation being with the feeling quality of what's arising in the moment, pleasant or unpleasant and neutral. And then also how that then manifests in terms of emotions, right? Different kinds of emotions that are pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. And then the third foundation that we talked about, mindfulness of the mind, how the mind kind of grabs our attention and whisks us off to a different part of the dance floor than the immediacy of the present moment. So we talked about that, which you could kind of summarize that with how I introduced the meditation: being relaxed in the body, being alert with the mind, being focused on the present moment, having the mind be very attentive and focused on just what's happening now, and being kind with oneself. Remember, I said, one thing we want to make sure we're doing when we're being mindful is that we're bringing heartfulness, some self-compassion and kindness to the practice. So when we get whisked off around the dance floor and mindful by our thoughts and what strong emotions, we want to very gently and kindly bring ourselves back to the present moment, to the immediacy of our senses and the body and the breath. So you might recognize RAIN, RAIN, the acronym that kind of describes this. We start the first foundations, we recognize what's happening, being caught in being triggered or being reactive. Then we bring the heart, our heartful intelligence, our emotional intelligence to bear. How am I feeling? Does this feel pleasant or unpleasant? What kind of emotion is arising? And we bring kindness. At the N in RAIN, we bring nurturance to that. We're kind to ourselves as we practice and bring ourselves back to the immediacy of the present moment. And then there's the I in RAIN. As we start to be able to stay with the present moment, we start to be able to explore and investigate what's happening moment by moment with the mind, with the emotions in the mind, and how that tends to grab us and whisk us off, to other parts of the dance floor. So, we may notice, I don't know if you got a taste of this when we were meditating briefly before, but if you meditate more and more or go on a retreat, you might notice that the fourth aspect of RAIN starts to happen. We start to be able to stop identifying with all this, all the suffering, the reactivity, being caught in thoughts and painfulness of thinking or in craving. We start to be able to just see a thought as a thought or a sensation as a sensation and not be identified with it, not to think it's me that's thinking or it's me that's having that sensation. It's just a thought, it's just sensation that's arising, it's coming and going, and I don't have to be identified with it and derive a sense of self from it. The Buddha talks about the importance of no self, non-identification, not attaching to whatever arises as being me or mine. So ultimately, if we're able to cultivate these three levels of intelligence of the body, our instincts, our feeling, and our alertness, we can begin to stop identifying with the suffering, the dukkha, the conditioning of our minds, our hearts, and our bodies. So what's going on is that we're using our centers of intelligence. And the reason the Enneagram can be so powerful with this is that if we do learn our type, if we learn which of the centers of intelligence we lean on and how we lean on it, do we tend to be more assertive, more compliant, more withdrawn? We start to see these very deeply into how identified we are, what our deeper conditioning is, what's blocking us from our deeper capacities for being mindful and aware and our Buddha nature or capacities of our awakened nature that are kind of blocked by these 9 blind spots or coping mechanisms that the Enneagram is such a wonderful map of showing us. So I think I will pause there and we can talk about this a bit. I do want to mention, though, that I am giving another talk in a month. I think it's June 28th, Friday, June 28th. So we'll go a lot deeper into how to work with the Enneagram. And also, the Enneagram you could say, is a beautiful diagnostic tool of these 9 forms of dukkha. But it's also way more than that. It's also a map of the pathway to awakening beyond just being identified and fixated in one of these 9 core patterns of dukkha. So we'll talk a lot more about that in the next talk at the end of June. But I wanted to basically introduce you to the basic uh, stuck, ego fixation, ways of being stuck, first, and then we'll explore what the developmental path, the path to freedom, liberation from dukkha is for each of these 9 types the next time. Okay, so let's pause there, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we can go back to just having a bit of a dialogue about this. What are you curious about? Do you wonder how you might fit into this, what your type might be? Did you identify at all with any of these, or maybe you know some people that are one of these 9 types, and maybe you have a sense of how developing these 3 centers of intelligence in a balanced way can help with discovering what your particular type might be. So I'll just open it up. Does anybody have any? Yes, Annalise. You want to go off mute there?
Thank you. I have a question. You'll immediately identify me as a mind type here, right there. But it sounds like a 3x3 matrix. And
yes, it is.
And I was wondering if I got the 3 criteria right. You distinguished between withdrawn, assertive, and I'm not entirely sure what the third one is.
Compliant.
Compliant.
Yeah. I'm going to go into that in a lot more detail next month. I just wanted to make sure we'd have a chance to talk about just the basics. But yes, those are the 3. By the way, they line up with the 3. There's a typology in Buddhism as well. Sometimes in Buddhism we talk about the 3 toxins or poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. So it's basically those 3 as well. It's also, you could say, it's fight, flight, or freeze, right? The fight types are the assertive types. The freeze types are the withdrawn types, right? Kind of withdrawing into your shell. and the compliant types are the deluded types. They're trying to project an image, and they're very identified with the image of that they're putting out there. So there's some danger coming at you, let's say, and you have a tendency to go into fight, flight, or freeze. There's a tendency to go into one of those 3. So those are the 3 variations of the 3, yeah. Did you have another question about that?
No, just if the next session will be recorded, because sadly I'll have to
Yes. Yes, they're both going to be recorded.
Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. Yeah, good question. Yes, Myra. Go, if you could go off mute.
Always forget that. Okay. I have worked with the Enneagram quite a bit, and I've never identified with anything else but number 4, And interestingly enough, I've always met other number 4s. This is the one number I've met the most. I don't know why that is. Maybe you can say. And yeah, but working with it and knowing what kind of your, it's kind of like it's your weakness, it's your obsessions, these numbers and what the characteristics are, knowing about them is important or was important. I don't think that I'm completely transcended it, but it is, but to a certain degree. So knowing, your type helps you to transcend.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. It certainly has helped me as well. One way to look at this is I don't know if I mentioned, I like the term blind spots. These 9 types are the thing about yourself that you don't, you're so identified with it from an early age that you don't really see it about yourself. Other people sometimes get a feel for it. But without the help of an app like the Enneagram and working with people who can work with you with the Enneagram, it's kind of hard to see it because it's a blind spot. Yeah. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, Linda, you had a question?
I do. Isn't there? I've worked with the Enneagram, but not in this particular way.
Hmm.
but with Jungian archetypes and in the Franciscan spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
Isn't there a wing? Isn't there a wing to?
Yes.
Okay, will you talk about that next time too?
Yeah, I'm going to get into a lot more detail about the inner lines that you saw.
Okay, great.
Those strange blue and
Yes.
gold lines.
Yeah.
And also, the wings are the type that's on either side of the type you most identify with, and that can flavor your core type, the one of the two neighboring wings. It's
Yes, that's what I want you to. Yes, so you will talk about that next time. Okay, great.
yeah, I'll get into inner lines and the wings and the whole developmental path that implies. Yeah, because like I said, the Enneagram isn't just about how you're stuck and what your
Yes.
blind spot is, but how to become free of that blind spot. What's your developmental path? And uncovering the core strengths, but in a way that balances the three centers, like we were doing with the three foundations of mindfulness.
So are there two other wings or is there one wing?
It varies. Some
It
people
does. Okay.
exhibit both flavors of their two wings on either side, and some people
Gotcha.
lean toward one or the other. Sometimes people go back and forth. That's probably the most variable part of one's type. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Yeah. 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 Any other questions? Yes, Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hi. I'll tell everyone else that I'm in Rob's Metro group, so we meet weekly. And I kind of got the impression from that when you talked about Enneagram that you work with people one-on-one regarding
Yes.
this. Is that the case? And what does that look like?
Yeah, so I do a typing interview. So I'm certified in the Enneagram. So I've got a whole protocol of questions that takes about an hour and a half that I walk through with you to give you a sense of what your type likely is. I'm not supposed to tell you your type. You have to figure that out for yourself. And sometimes people get typed wrong, but that's the best way I know of finding out what your type is, to actually work with somebody who has been trained in this and can do a typing interview with you. And then what I'll sometimes do, if people want to go further than that, is we can do some one-on-one coaching and work with the mindful Enneagram, using the three centers of intelligence as a way to look at the imbalance of the centers for each type. It's one thing I don't think I mentioned, I'm going to talk about next time, but there's a characteristic way that each of the 9 types is out of touch with the 3 centers of intelligence. So if you're a mental type, it tends to be your dominant center, right? And the body and the heart tend to be either more or less unconscious or reactive. So each of the 9 types has a different kind of signature or characteristic way of being imbalanced in the 3 centers. So when I work with people and I coach people, I help them work with the 3 foundations of mindfulness, the core foundations of mindfulness, and their type, and that developmental trajectory that we're going to talk about next time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. Yes, Maria.
Hi, I am new to this. So my question is, can it be possible I could identify not with one, but with 3, but 2 are in the same center and the other one is not? Could it be possible? I identify with 9, 1, and 2.
Yeah, so there are different theories about how to apply the Enneagram. There is a theory called the tri-type theory that says that for each of the 3 centers of intelligence, you have a dominant type, right? I don't particularly subscribe to that. I think it kind of takes away from the power of the Enneagram, because then it gets a bit too complicated to work with 3 types rather than 1. And most teachers think it's more of a distraction than a help. But, there may be something to it. Often you could also take an Enneagram test, by the way. There's a lot of them out there I can recommend. Some are better than others. The ones that cost more money tend to be the better ones. But often it'll be a little inconclusive when you take a test, even the best tests. But the best ones will tell you kind of, okay, well, this seems like this might be the one you are, and this is kind of second place, and right. And I was mistyped initially many years ago. I thought I was a type 9, not a type 7. And I was mistyped. So it can be a process to really zero in on the right one. But usually when I do a typing interview, I give people at least 3 options. So maybe those would be the 3 options that would come up if we did a typing interview. I don't know, but yeah. I think you're already getting a sense of it, it sounds like, right? Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Sharon.
I'm also very new at this, but this question comes off the back of something that you just said a moment ago in regards to you thought you were a 9.
Yes.
And then you became a 7.
Right.
When you were a 9, does that happen when you, for instance, you grow up in a particular way, you move through that, you see what it was, and you move on to something new? I mean, do we always carry that, the learning, what we take on as children?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that ever move? Do we ever, like, I know that it moves, in the way that we might respond, but does that, yeah.
That is the developmental path, is to go from being over dependent on our natural talent. Maybe we're naturally talented with one of the 3 centers, but we all can develop all 3 centers and become proficient in all 3. And we tend to get developed in a lopsided way as little infants because we're just grabbing for whatever works, to feel safe and secure, and to please our parents and so forth. But the 9 types are like the starting point. And then there's a pathway that takes us eventually to balancing all 3 centers, just like we're doing with the 3 foundations of mindfulness. Yeah. So yeah, you do change, hopefully. I mean, we're talking about waking up to our Buddha nature, our essential nature and all the capacities of that. Yeah. Yeah, great question. I'm glad you asked that. All right, so I think we're going to have to close. It's 5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock here in the East Coast. So I just published a website, and I give a more detailed talk on this if you'd like, and I provide other resources and more of an explanation of what this is all about if you're interested. There's actually a Mindful Enneagram website that's already out there. That's not mine. Mine's mindful-enneagram, one word, mindful-enneagram.com. So look for that one, not mindful. Enneagram is 2 words, but mindful-enneagram.com. And if you're interested in the different tests you can take and other great writings about that, or and my own explanations that go into more depth, but we'll be getting into that in another month. So I hope you can make that talk as well, and we'll explore more deeply how to take the Enneagram and work with it. Yeah. Good. Well, it's great to be with you all today. Yeah. Hope this was interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.